The silver ships came out of nowhere like falling stars against the black of space. Captain Lisa Morgan stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched the alien fleet take position near Jupiter. She had never seen anything so beautiful or so terrifying in her 20 years of space service. The ships moved with perfect grace, their hulls gleaming like polished metal under the distant sun. "How many are there?" Lisa asked her tactical officer. 200 confirmed, Captain. "Maybe. More coming through the jump point." Lisa felt her stomach drop. Earth's entire defense fleet had only 50 ships, and most of those were converted cargo haulers with weapons bolted on. These alien vessels looked like they were built for war from the ground up. The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in perfect English, though it had a musical quality that made Lisa's skin crawl. "Primitive inhabitants of the third planet. I am Admiral Kithra Vex of the Zephyrian Empire. Your world has been selected for integration into our domain. Surrender now, and your species will be granted the honor of serving a superior civilization. You have one of your time units called ours to respond." Lisa looked around her bridge. Her crew stared back at her with a mixture of fear and determination. Lieutenant Amy Foster, her youngest pilot, had her hands clenched into fists. "Commander." Kate Sullivan stood ready at the weapons console, waiting for orders. "Open a channel," Lisa said. The main screen flickered and showed a tall alien woman with silver skin that seemed to glow from within. Strange markings pulsed with soft light along her neck and face. She wore what looked like ceremonial armor made from the same silver material as her ships. Her eyes were large and completely black, giving her an otherworldly beauty that was both fascinating and unsettling. "I am Captain Lisa Morgan of the Earth Defense Fleet," Lisa said, keeping her voice steady. "We decline your generous offer." Admiral Kithra's expression showed genuine surprise. "You refuse? Do you not understand the situation? We possess technology beyond your comprehension. Your resistance would be meaningless." "Maybe," Lisa replied. "But we're going to resist anyway. This is illogical. Why would an inferior species choose destruction over the honor of service?" Lisa smiled grimly. "Because we're human. Logic doesn't always apply." The alien admiral studied her for a long moment. "Very well. We shall demonstrate the futility of your position. Prepare your defenses, primitive one. We shall show you the price of defying the Zephyrian Empire." The transmission ended. Lisa turned to her crew. "All ships, battle stations. This is not a drill." The first attack came within minutes. Zephyrian ships moved in perfect formation, their weapons creating beautiful streams of energy that tore through space. Lisa watched 3 Earth defense platforms disappear in brilliant flashes of light. "Return fire," she ordered. The human response was chaotic by comparison. Ships broke formation and attacked from random angles. Some vessels charged straight at the enemy while others tried to flank from impossible positions. It should have been suicide. But something strange happened. The Zephyrian ships, so perfect in their coordination, seemed confused by the human tactics. They had clearly prepared for a conventional battle, not the wild melee that erupted around. Jupiter's orbit. Amy Foster piloted her fighter in a spinning dive that brought her under a Zephyrian cruiser. She fired everything she had into what sensors said was the engine section. The alien ship shuddered and began to drift. "How did you know where to hit it?" Lisa asked over the comm. "I didn't," Amy replied. "I just picked something that looked important and shot at it." On the alien flagship, Admiral Kithra watched the battle with growing concern. Her tactical officer, Subcommander Thyra Zell, looked equally puzzled. "Admiral, their attack patterns make no sense," Thyra reported. "They seem to be acting without any coordination at all." "Yet they're causing damage," Kithra observed. "How is this possible?" "I don't know, Admiral. Our simulation programs cannot predict their next moves because they appear to have no strategy." Kithra frowned. In all her campaigns across the galaxy, she had never encountered anything like this. Every species they had conquered followed logical military doctrine. Even when facing superior forces, they fought in predictable ways that could be countered with proper tactics. But these humans seemed to delight in doing the unexpected. She watched as one of their ships actually rammed itself into a Zephyrian destroyer, both vessels exploding in a ball of fire. The human pilot had sacrificed herself just to take out one enemy ship. Madness, Thyra whispered. No, Kithra said slowly. Something else. These humans fight like they have nothing to lose. The battle raged for 6 hours. By the end, the Zephyrians had destroyed most of the human defense platforms and half their fleet. But they had also lost 12 ships of their own, more than in their last 3 conquests combined. Lisa found herself alone on the bridge of the heavily damaged Defiance. Most of her crew was either dead or wounded, but she was still alive, and her ship could still fight. The communication system activated again. Admiral Kithra appeared on screen, her perfect composure slightly cracked. You have fought with honor. Captain Morgan, though your methods are unconventional. Surrender now, and I will guarantee the safety of your remaining forces. No, your fleet is broken. Your defenses are gone. What more can you possibly achieve? Lisa looked at the tactical display. Earth's orbital defenses were indeed shattered, but there were still ships out there, still people willing to fight, and more importantly, there were millions of humans on the planet below who would never stop resisting. We can show you something. Admiral, Lisa said, we can show you what happens when you try to conquer a species that doesn't know how to quit. Kithra stared at her for a long moment. Your dedication is admirable but futile. We will continue this tomorrow. We'll be waiting. The transmission ended, and Lisa slumped in her command chair. She knew they couldn't win a straight fight. The Zephyrians were too advanced, too organized, too powerful. But maybe, just maybe, they could make the aliens question whether Earth was worth the cost of taking it. Outside her ship, the silver fleet of the Zephyrian Empire hung in space like predators waiting for dawn. But on the bridge of every human ship still able to fight, determined voices were already planning for tomorrow's battle. The war for Earth had begun, and neither side truly understood what they were getting into. 3 days after the first battle, the war had spread across the entire solar system. Captain Lisa Morgan stood in the command center of Mars Colony, watching evacuation ships struggle to escape the planet's surface. The Zephyrian fleet had split into smaller groups, attacking human settlements with surgical precision. "Status report!" Lisa called out. 18 civilian ships still loading passengers, reported Commander Kate Sullivan. But we've got Zephyrian cruisers moving in from the asteroid belt. They'll be here in 2 hours. Lisa studied the tactical display. The math was simple and brutal. The evacuation ships were slow and defenseless. The Zephyrian ships were fast and deadly. There was no way to get everyone out in time. How many people are still on the surface? 40,000, Kate answered quietly. Lisa felt the weight of those lives pressing down on her shoulders. In 3 days of fighting, she had learned that the Zephyrians followed strict rules of warfare. They gave warnings before attacking. They avoided unnecessary destruction. They even tried to minimize civilian casualties when possible. Those rules were about to get them all killed. "Send a message to all evacuation ships," Lisa ordered. "Tell them to mix in with our military vessels. Random spacing, no formation patterns." "Captain, that violates every safety protocol we have," Kate protested. "Good. Do it anyway." Admiral Kithra Vex watched the approaching human formation from her flagship's bridge. Something felt wrong about what she was seeing. The humans had mixed their civilian vessels with military ships in a chaotic jumble that made targeting individual threats nearly impossible. "Admiral, we cannot engage without risk to their non-combatants," Subcommander Thyra reported. "Then, we wait for them to clear the area," Kithra replied. But the humans didn't clear the area. Instead, the military ships began using the civilian vessels as cover, darting in and out of the formation to fire at Zephyrian forces before disappearing back into the crowd. "This is a violation of warfare conventions," Thyra said, her voice tight with anger. "Yes," Kithra agreed, "but it's also effective." Lieutenant Amy Foster piloted her fighter through the maze of evacuation ships, using their bulk to hide from enemy sensors. When she spotted a Zephyrian patrol craft, she waited until it came close to a passenger liner before opening fire. The enemy ship had to choose between returning fire and risking civilian lives or letting her escape. They chose to let her escape. "This is brilliant," Amy whispered to herself. "Absolutely horrible, but brilliant." The evacuation continued for 6 more hours. Every time the Zephyrians tried to engage, they found themselves facing the impossible choice of fighting through civilian shields or allowing human military forces to operate freely. Their honor code, which had served them well in conventional warfare, became a weakness the humans exploited mercilessly. But the real shock came when the last evacuation ship cleared Mars' orbit. Captain Lisa Morgan's voice crackled over all frequencies. Attention, Zephyrian fleet. Thank you for allowing our civilians to escape safely. We appreciate your restraint. Admiral Kithra stared at the communication console. Did she just, thank us? It appears so, Admiral. For letting them escape? Yes, Admiral. Kithra felt something she had never experienced in 30 years of military service. She felt manipulated. The humans had used her own honor against her and then had the audacity to thank her for it. The battles that followed established a pattern that frustrated the Zephyrian command. Human forces refused to fight fair. They used false surrender signals to draw enemies into traps. They hid weapons on medical ships. They even programmed their evacuation pods to explode if Zephyrian ships came too close. Subcommander Thyra found herself studying recordings of human tactics late into the ship's night cycle. What her people saw as dishonorable chaos, she was beginning to recognize as something else entirely. They're not random, she murmured to herself. They're unpredictable. There's a difference. She pulled up the battle data from the Mars evacuation. Every seemingly desperate human move had served a purpose. The chaotic formation hadn't been chaos at all. It had been a carefully calculated psychological attack designed to paralyze Zephyrian decision-making. Computer, analyze human tactical patterns, she ordered. Unable to comply. Human tactical patterns show no consistent logic. That's the point, Thyra realized. They're not trying to be logical. They're trying to be impossible to predict. Meanwhile, Captain Morgan was leading the defense of Europa Station, one of humanity's most important research facilities. The Zephyrians had surrounded the moon with overwhelming force, demanding surrender. Instead of surrendering, Morgan ordered every human ship to attack at once from all directions. It was suicide, and everyone knew it. But as the human ships charged toward certain death, something unexpected happened. Some of the Zephyrian ships hesitated. Admiral Kithra watched her own forces falter as waves of human fighters crashed against their formation. The humans were dying by the hundreds, but they kept coming. Ship after ship exploded in brilliant flashes, but the survivors pressed forward without slowing down. Admiral, some of our captains are requesting permission to withdraw, Thyra reported, her voice strained. Withdraw? We're winning. Yes, Admiral, but our crews are becoming disturbed by human tactics. They don't understand how anyone can fight with such disregard for their own survival. Kithra understood. She was feeling it too. There was something deeply unsettling about facing an enemy who seemed eager to die as long as they could hurt you in the process. The Zephyrian military was built on the concept of honorable victory. But what did victory mean against an opponent who celebrated their own destruction as long as it served their cause? The Europa battle ended with another tactical victory for the Zephyrians. They took the station and captured most of the human defenders. But the cost had been higher than expected, and the psychological impact on Zephyrian forces was becoming a serious problem. Commander Kate Sullivan had been captured during the battle, but she noticed something interesting about her captors. The Zephyrian soldiers who guarded her seemed nervous. They jumped at sudden noises and watched the human, prisoners with obvious unease. "You're scared of us," she said to her guard. The silver-skinned alien looked at her with those large black eyes. "Your species fights without honor." "No," Kate replied. "We fight without rules. There's a difference. Rules exist to prevent unnecessary suffering. Rules exist to make warfare predictable. We don't want to be predictable." The guard fell silent, but Kate could see the uncertainty in her expression. The Zephyrians had built their empire by following a code of conduct that made them superior to the species they conquered. But that same code was proving to be a liability against humans who refused to follow any code at all. Admiral Kithra stood in her private quarters, staring out at the stars. 3 weeks of fighting had given her forces control of most human orbital installations, but at a cost she hadn't anticipated. Her casualty reports were manageable, But the psychological evaluations of her crews were troubling. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were conducting a massive exercise in psychological warfare, designed to make their enemies question everything they believed about combat, honor, and the nature of conflict itself. And it was working. Sub-Commander Thyra entered her quarters. Without announcement, a breach of protocol that would normally result in discipline. "Admiral, I need to speak with you about the humans." "What about them?" "I think we're making a mistake." Kithra turned to face her second-in-command. "Explain." "They're not trying to win battles, Admiral. They're trying to win something else. They're trying to make us not want to fight them anymore." Outside, the flagship, Human Resistance, continued across the solar system. Small groups of fighters launched desperate attacks against impossible odds. Civilian ships modified themselves into weapons platforms. Even captured humans found ways to sabotage Zephyrian equipment. The war was far from over, but something fundamental had already changed. The Zephyrians had come expecting to face a primitive species that would surrender once faced with superior force. Instead, they had encountered something that challenged their most basic assumptions about how intelligent beings should behave. And in the depths of space, more human ships were gathering, preparing for battles that would push the boundaries of conventional warfare even further. The Zephyrian scout ship tumbled through Earth's atmosphere like a broken star. Sub-Commander Thyra Zell fought with the failing controls as her vessel carved a burning path across the night sky. The human attack had come from nowhere. 3 fighters emerging from the shadow of an asteroid to cripple her ship before vanishing back into the dark. She managed to crash land in a forest somewhere on Earth's northern continent. The impact threw her against the cabin wall and she felt something crack in her left arm. Silver blood ran down her face as she struggled to activate the emergency beacon. Nothing happened. The ship's communication system was dead. Lieutenant, Amy Foster found the crash site 2 hours later. She approached carefully through the trees, her rifle ready. The alien ship was smaller than she had expected, more elegant than the massive warships that filled the sky above Earth. Steam rose from its cracked hull, and she could see movement through a damaged viewport. Amy had been part of the ground resistance for 6 weeks now. She had seen what Zephyrian weapons could do to human cities. She had friends who died screaming under alien fire. Every instinct told her to put a bullet through that viewport and be done with it. Instead, she found herself studying the figure inside the ship. The alien was obviously injured, struggling to reach some kind of control panel. Amy could see silver, blood on her face and the way she favored one arm. "Don't be stupid," Amy whispered to herself, but she was already moving closer to the ship. Thyra looked up to see a human face peering through the damaged viewport. The creature was smaller than she had expected, with brown hair tied back and dirt smeared across her features. She carried a primitive kinetic weapon, but she wasn't pointing it at Thyra. Their eyes met for a long moment. Then the human did something that made no sense at all. She set down her weapon and began trying to pry open the ship's entry hatch. Amy managed to get the alien out of her ship, though it took 20 minutes of careful work. The Zephyrian was taller than she was, with that same silver skin and luminescent markings she had seen in battle recordings. Up close, she looked almost fragile despite her height. "Why are you helping me?" Thyra asked in perfect English. "I don't. No," Amy admitted. "Maybe because you look like you need help. I am your enemy. Right now you're just hurt." Amy helped Thyra to a makeshift shelter in a nearby cave. She cleaned the alien's wounds with water from her canteen and used medical supplies from her pack to bandage the injured arm. Thyra watched her work with obvious confusion. "Your species is even stranger than our intelligence report suggested," Thyra said. "How do you mean?" "You show mercy to someone who came here to conquer your world," Amy shrugged. "My grandmother always said you judge people by how they treat those who can't fight back. Right now you can't fight back. And when I can, then we'll probably try to kill each other again. But that's later." They spent 3 days in the cave while Amy waited for extraction by human forces. During that time, Thyra learned more about humanity than 6 weeks of military intelligence had taught her. Amy shared her food rations, told stories about her life before the war, and asked questions about Zephyrian culture that no one had bothered to ask before. "Do your people have music?" Amy asked on the second night. "We had music once," Thyra replied. Long ago, before the Empire grew large. Now we have military anthems and victory songs, but nothing like what you showed me. Amy had sung a few human songs to pass the time. Simple melodies her mother had taught her as a child. Thyra had listened with an expression of wonder that seemed strange on her silver features. What happened to it? Your music, I mean. The Empire values unity above all else. Individual expression was seen as divisive. We were taught that art and music were luxuries that weak species indulged in while stronger ones conquered the galaxy. That sounds lonely. Thyra considered this. I never thought of it that way before. But yes, I suppose it is. On the third day, Amy's radio crackled to life. Foster, this is Command. What's your status? Amy looked at Thyra, who was listening intently. I'm alive, Command, but I have a situation. Explain. I have a Zephyrian prisoner, requesting extraction for interrogation. There was a pause. Confirmed, Foster. Extraction team inbound. Keep that alien secured. After Amy signed off, Thyra spoke quietly. You could have told them I was dead. Yeah. Why didn't you? Amy was quiet for a moment. Because I think there are things you could tell us. Not military stuff, but important things, about why your people really came here. To expand the Empire, to bring order to chaos. But why? What's the point of an empire that doesn't have music? 2 hours later, human soldiers arrived to collect them both. As they prepared to leave the cave, Thyra spoke to Amy one last time. Your people fight strangely, but they live strangely too. I'm beginning to understand why you won't surrender. Oh? You're not just fighting for your planet. You're fighting for the right to be weird. Amy grinned. That's probably the best description of humanity I've ever heard. Meanwhile, in space above Earth, Admiral Kithra faced a different kind of crisis. High Command had grown impatient with the slow pace of the conquest. They were sending reinforcements, along with new orders that made her stomach turn. Planet sterilization weapons, she said to her communication officer. They want me to use planet sterilization weapons? Those are the orders, Admiral. High Command believes the human resistance is becoming a threat to Imperial morale. Kithra stared at the tactical display showing Earth below. Billions of humans lived on that world. Strange, stubborn, impossible humans who sang songs and showed mercy to their enemies and refused to accept the logic of superior force. Admiral, her officer prompted. I need time to study their defenses, Kithra said finally. Tell High Command I require 2 weeks to identify optimal target sites. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But it bought her time to think. Captain. Lisa Morgan launched her desperate counterattack while Thyra was still in human custody. She led 15 ships in a direct assault on the Zephyrian staging area beyond Pluto, knowing it was likely suicide but hoping to achieve something more important than military victory. The attack was a disaster from a tactical standpoint. 12 human ships were destroyed in the first hour of fighting. But it accomplished exactly what Lisa had hoped for. It showed the Zephyrians that humans would never stop fighting, no matter how hopeless the situation became. Lisa's ship, the Defiance, was crippled during the battle. When Zephyrian forces boarded her vessel, she was sitting calmly in her command chair, waiting for them. They brought her to Admiral Kithra's flagship in shackles, but Kithra ordered them removed before their first meeting. She wanted to understand. This human who had thrown away her fleet just to make a point. Why? Kithra asked when they were alone in her quarters. You knew you couldn't win. Why waste those ships and those lives? To show you something, Lisa replied. Show me what? That we're never going to stop. You can kill all of us, but we'll keep fighting until the last human is dead. And then the ones you thought were dead will get back up and keep fighting some more. Kithra studied her prisoner. The human showed no fear, no desperation. She seemed almost amused by her situation. Your species has a death wish. No, Lisa said. We have a life wish. We want to live free more than we want to live safely. Freedom is an illusion. Order is real. Maybe. But our illusions are more interesting than your reality. They talked for hours, and Kithra found herself genuinely enjoying the conversation. The human had a quick mind and a strange sense of humor that caught the Admiral off guard. She spoke about human culture, human dreams. human stubbornness, as if these were virtues instead of weaknesses. "Tell me about your music," Kithra said eventually. Lisa looked surprised. "Our music?" "Yes. I've heard that humans create art for no practical purpose. I'm curious about why." So Lisa told her about human music, about songs that made people cry or laugh or fall in love, about melodies that captured feelings too complex for words, about the way music could bring strangers together or help someone feel less alone. As she spoke, Kithra found herself thinking about Sub-Commander Thyra's reports from the surface, about humans who showed mercy to enemies and sang lullabies to children during bombing raids, about a species that somehow found beauty in the middle of a war for survival. "Your people are either the wisest in the galaxy or the most foolish," Kithra said when Lisa finished. "Probably both," Lisa admitted. "Does it matter which?" Outside the Admiral's quarters, the Zephyrian Empire continued its slow conquest of the solar system. But inside, two beings from different worlds found themselves questioning everything they had believed about war, honor, and the price of victory. Galaxy was about to discover that some ideas were more dangerous than any weapon. Captain Lisa Morgan had been a prisoner on the Zephyrian flagship for 2 weeks when everything started to fall apart. She spent her days in surprisingly comfortable quarters, her evenings in long conversations with Admiral Kithra, and her nights planning ways to escape that she knew would probably fail. What she didn't plan for was the Zephyrian officer who came to her door in the middle of the ship's sleep cycle. "Captain Morgan," the alien whispered, "I am Communications Officer Vera Shin. I need to speak with you about Sub-Commander Thera." Lisa sat up on her sleeping platform. Vera was younger than most Zephyrian officers she had met, with markings that pulsed more rapidly than normal. She seemed nervous. "What about Thyra? She has been sending unauthorized transmissions to your resistance forces. Intelligence about our fleet positions, supply routes, vulnerable targets. She is committing treason against the Empire." Lisa kept her expression neutral. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I have been monitoring the transmissions. And because I agree with them." "You agree with treason?" "I agree that this war is wrong." Vera explained that a growing number of younger Zephyrian officers were questioning the invasion. They had studied human culture through intercepted communications and found it fascinating rather than primitive. They had watched battle recordings and seen courage instead of chaos. Some had even begun secretly learning human music and art. "Admiral Kithra protects us by saying we are studying enemy psychology," Vera said. "But we are really studying what we have lost." "What you've lost?" "The right to choose our own path. The Empire tells us what to think, what to value, what to become. Your people fight for the right to make their own choices, even bad ones. We envy that." Lisa realized she was witnessing something unprecedented. The human resistance wasn't just fighting a military campaign. They were accidentally spreading an idea that was more dangerous to the Empire than any weapon. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, Lieutenant Amy Foster was learning just how valuable her prisoner had become. Thyra had provided intelligence that allowed the Resistance to strike at Zephyrian supply convoys with devastating effectiveness. But more importantly, she had become a bridge between two species that barely understood each other. "Your tactical analysis was correct," Amy told her during one of their planning sessions. "The convoy will have minimal escort through the asteroid belt. It will be defended by honor guard units," Thyra warned. "They are the most loyal soldiers in the Empire. They will not hesitate to die for their duty." "Unlike you," Thyra considered this. "I used to think duty meant following orders without question. Your people have taught me that sometimes duty means questioning everything." Amy smiled. "Welcome to being human. It's confusing most of the time." The attacks that followed were surgical in their precision. Commander Kate Sullivan led strike teams that hit Zephyrian supply lines with information so accurate it seemed impossible. Ship after ship carrying weapons, fuel, and reinforcements vanished in the dark between planets. Admiral Kithra knew she had a traitor in her ranks, but the purges ordered by High Command were destroying her fleet's effectiveness faster than human attacks. Loyal officers were arrested on suspicion. Units spent more time watching each other than fighting the enemy. Morale plummeted as the Zephyrian forces began to tear themselves apart. "Admiral, we have lost another supply convoy," her tactical officer reported. "How many ships?" All of them, 6 freighters and 2 escort cruisers. No survivors. Kithra studied the attack pattern on her display. The humans had known exactly where to strike and when. Either they had developed impossible intelligence capabilities, or someone was feeding them information. "Initiate Security Protocol 7, she ordered. "I want every communication monitored and every officer's activities logged." But the security crackdown only made things worse. Fear and suspicion spread through the fleet like a disease. Officers who had served together for years began to distrust each other. The rigid unity that had been the Empire's greatest strength became a weakness as paranoia replaced cooperation. The crisis came to a head when High Command's hardline faction decided Admiral Kithra was either incompetent or treasonous. They sent Admiral Vox Krell to replace her, along with orders to use the planet sterilization weapons immediately. Krell arrived with a squadron of the Empire's most fanatical ships. His first act was to arrest Kithra and half her senior staff. His second was to prepare for the complete destruction of Earth's biosphere. "You have allowed sentiment to cloud your judgment," Krell told Kithra as she was placed in detention. "These humans are a disease that threatens the very foundations of Imperial order. They must be eradicated completely." "They are a people fighting for their freedom," Kithra replied. "Freedom is chaos. Order is strength. You have forgotten the basic principles of Imperial doctrine." "Perhaps Imperial doctrine is wrong." Krell's expression showed genuine shock. "You are more corrupted than I thought." As Krell prepared to destroy Earth, a mutiny erupted aboard Kithra's former flagship. The younger officers, led by Communications Officer Vera, attempted to retake the ship. They were joined by older officers who had grown to respect their admiral's judgment. The battle was brief, but vicious. Zephyrian fought Zephyrian in the corridors of their own vessel, while Lisa Morgan sat in her cell and listened to the sounds of civil war. When the fighting ended, Vera appeared at her door with a key and a desperate expression. "Captain Morgan, we need your help." "What's happening?" "Admiral Krell is powering up the sterilization weapons. We tried to stop him, but he has control of the weapon systems. Admiral Kithra is in detention, and we don't know how to override the firing sequence." Lisa followed Vera through corridors filled with silver bodies and the smell of burned electronics. The ship was in chaos, with some sections controlled by Kithra's loyalists and others held by Krell's hardliners. They found Kithra in a detention cell, her hands bound with energy restraints. She looked up as Lisa approached. "Captain Morgan, I didn't expect to see you free. Your people are fighting each other over whether to commit genocide. Seemed like a good time to escape." "Krell will not listen to reason. He believes the Empire's survival depends on your species' complete destruction." "Then we stop him." "We?" Lisa looked at the assembled Zephyrian officers. They were young, scared, and completely out of their depth, but they were also willing to fight their own people to prevent mass murder. "Yeah, we. You're not the only one who's had time to think during this war." The battle for control of the flagship turned into a 3-way fight. Krell's hardliners tried to maintain control of the weapon systems. Kithra's loyalists fought to stop them. And Lisa Morgan, armed with a Zephyrian weapon she barely knew how to use, led a desperate charge toward the ship's command center. The fighting was confused and brutal. Zephyrian military training emphasized honor and discipline, but this was neither honorable nor disciplined. This was civil war, with all the chaos and desperation that implied. Lisa found herself fighting alongside beings who had been her enemies days before. Vera covered her advance with precise fire, while young Zephyrian officers followed her lead through corridors they knew better than she did. When they finally reached the command center, they found Admiral Krell standing over the firing controls with a determined expression. "You cannot stop what must be done," he declared. "The Empire will survive by destroying this human infection before it spreads further. The only infection here is your inability to see beyond conquest," Kithra replied. She had been freed during the fighting and now stood across the command center from her replacement. "You have been corrupted by human sentiment. You no longer serve the Empire's interests. I serve the Empire's survival, and the Empire cannot survive if it becomes the thing these humans fight against." The two admirals faced each other while Lisa and the others watched. This was more than a personal conflict. It was a battle for the soul of an entire civilization. Krell reached for the firing controls. Kithra moved to stop him. And in the space between them, the future of two species hung in the balance. The final battle for Earth was about to be decided not by superior weapons or tactical brilliance, but by the question of what kind of universe intelligent beings wanted to live in. And somewhere in the dark between the stars, more human ships were approaching, carrying refugees who had become warriors, and warriors who had learned to value what they were fighting for more than how they fought for it. The command center of the Zephyrian flagship erupted into violence as Admiral Krell lunged for the firing controls. Lisa Morgan threw herself between him and the weapon systems, her stolen Zephyrian rifle crackling with energy. Admiral Kithra moved from the other side, her own weapon drawn. "Stand down, Krell," Kithra ordered. "This ends here." "You are no longer fit to command," Krell snarled. "The Empire will not be infected by human weakness." He fired at Kithra, but Lisa was faster. Her shot caught him in the shoulder, spinning him away from the controls. Kithra's return fire put him down permanently. The command center fell silent except for the hum of electronics and the soft breathing of beings who had just prevented genocide. "It's over," Vera whispered. "No," Kithra said, looking at the tactical display. "It's beginning." Outside the flagship, the Zephyrian fleet was splitting apart. Ships loyal to Krell's hardline faction were withdrawing toward the outer system, while those supporting Kithra's position remained in Earth orbit. The civil war that had started in a single ship's corridors was spreading throughout the entire invasion force. Lisa watched the chaos unfold on the tactical screens. "Your empire is tearing itself apart." "Good," Kithra replied. "It was built on ideas that couldn't survive contact with yours." "What happens now?" "Now we find out if two very different species can learn to coexist without one trying to conquer the other." The negotiations took place aboard a neutral human space station that had somehow survived the war. Captain Lisa Morgan sat across from Admiral Kithra while their respective fleets maintained an uneasy truce in the space around them. "Your terms are unusual," Kithra said, reviewing the human proposal. "Everything about this war has been unusual," Lisa replied. "Why stop now?" The humans weren't asking for Zephyrian surrender or reparations. Instead, they proposed something unprecedented, a mutual defense pact between equals. Earth would remain independent but would share its tactical innovations with the reformed Zephyrian fleet. In exchange, the Zephyrians would provide technological assistance and protection from other threats. "You want us to teach you how to fight like humans," Kithra observed. "And you want us to teach you why humans fight the way we do." "The Empire will not accept this. The hardline factions will never agree to treat a primitive species as equals." "Then they're not your empire anymore, are they?" Kithra considered this. The Zephyrian forces under her command now consisted mainly of younger officers who had grown disillusioned with imperial doctrine. They controlled perhaps a third of the original invasion fleet. The rest had either fled with the hardliners or been destroyed in the Civil War. "We would be exiles from our own people." "Welcome to the club," Lisa said. "Every human alive is an exile from the species we used to be." Sub-Commander Thyra, now serving as an unofficial ambassador, entered the conference room with Lieutenant Amy Foster. They had been working together to establish communication protocols between human and Zephyrian forces. "The first joint patrol is ready to launch," Thyra reported. "Mixed crews, human and Zephyrian officers." "How are they getting along?" Kithra asked. Amy grinned. "The Zephyrians are trying to teach proper military procedure. The humans are teaching them poker. I think the humans are winning." "They're teaching each other," Thyra corrected. "The humans are learning about advanced sensor technology. The Zephyrians are learning about improvisation and creative problem-solving." 6 months later, the first real test of the new alliance came when long-range sensors detected another alien fleet approaching, the solar system. The hegemony of worlds had heard rumors of Zephyrian failure and human resistance. They came expecting to find easy prey. Instead, they found Captain Lisa Morgan and Admiral Kithra commanding a joint fleet that combined human unpredictability with Zephyrian technology. The hegemony ships were larger and more powerful than anything humans had ever built. They were also more advanced than most Zephyrian vessels. Under normal circumstances, they should have been unstoppable. But these were not normal circumstances. Commander Kate Sullivan led the opening attack, using modified Zephyrian ships that looked like standard Imperial vessels. When the Hegemony fleet moved to engage what they thought were retreating Zephyrians, they found themselves facing human pilots who used Zephyrian honor codes as a weapon. Hegemony fleet, this is Admiral Kithra of the Reformed Zephyrian Alliance, came the transmission. You are trespassing in protected space. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences. The Hegemony commander laughed. One Zephyrian admiral against our entire fleet? Your empire has grown weak indeed. I'm not alone, Kithra replied. That's when the human ships decloaked. Lieutenant Amy Foster, now commanding her own squadron, led the first wave. Her ships came out of hyperspace in formation patterns that looked almost Zephyrian, but moved with human flexibility. They struck the Hegemony fleet's flanks, while Kithra's forces hit them head-on. The result was beautiful and terrible. Precise, Zephyrian targeting combined with human tactical insanity. Ships that fought with honor but weren't bound by its limitations. Technology guided by logic but inspired by creativity. The Hegemony fleet broke and ran after losing half their ships in the first hour of combat. Status report, Admiral Kithra called out after the battle ended. Minimal casualties, Admiral, reported Communications Officer Vera. The Joint Tactical Doctrine performed better than our best projections. Lisa Morgan's voice came over the comm from her own flagship. Not bad for a first date. A first date? Kithra asked, unfamiliar with the human expression. A trial run. A test to see if we're compatible. And your assessment? I think this relationship has potential. 2 years after the end of the invasion, war, Earth had become the capital of something unprecedented, a multi-species alliance based on mutual respect rather than conquest. The reformed Zephyrian Alliance and the Human Federation worked together to explore new regions of the galaxy and defend against threats that neither could face alone. Commander Kate Sullivan stood in the training facility on Luna Station, watching mixed units of humans and Zephyrians practice combat maneuvers. The integration had been challenging but successful. Humans learned Zephyrian discipline and precision. Zephyrians learned human adaptability and creative thinking. How's the training program going? Asked Amy Foster, now serving as the facility's commanding officer. Better than expected, Kate replied. The cultural exchange is fascinating. Did you know that young Zephyrians have started forming music groups? Music groups. They call it harmony synthesis. They're combining traditional Zephyrian vocal techniques with human musical instruments. The results are actually quite beautiful. Amy smiled. Think we're changing them, or they're changing us? Both. That's the point. In the command center of the Joint Fleet Headquarters, Admiral Kithra and Captain Lisa Morgan planned their next mission. Long-range scouts had detected signs of another aggressive species in a nearby star system. The Draconian Empire was reportedly mobilizing for expansion, and their path would take them through systems containing billions of innocent lives. Intelligence suggests they're even more militaristic than the old Zephyrian Empire, Kithra said, studying the tactical reports. Good thing we're not the old Zephyrian Empire anymore, Lisa replied, or the old human resistance for that matter. What are we now? Lisa looked out at the joint fleet assembled in the space around Earth. Human ships flew alongside Zephyrian vessels, their crews working together in ways that would have been impossible just a few years before. We're something new, she said, something that didn't exist before we met each other. And if the Draconians prove too powerful for even our combined forces, then we'll figure out something even newer. That's what we do. Kithra nodded, understanding. The humans had taught her species something valuable, that strength didn't come from perfect unity or superior technology. It came from the willingness to grow, to change, to become something better than what you were before. The joint fleet launched toward their next mission, carrying crews who had learned that the most terrifying force in the galaxy wasn't any particular weapon or strategy. It was the simple refusal to accept that things had to stay the way they were. Behind them, Earth turned in its orbit around an ordinary yellow star, but the planet that had once been targeted for conquest was now the center of an alliance that was changing the fundamental nature of how civilizations interacted with each other. The humans had fought to remain free. The Zephyrians had fought to remain true to their honor. Together they had discovered something worth fighting for that was bigger than either goal alone. And in the vast darkness between the stars, other species watched and wondered what these strange allies might teach them about the difference between ruling the galaxy and actually making it a better place to live.